All right, for part five of Building Mathematics, Secondary Math, we're going to wrap things up by starting with evidence-based practices. So, evidence-based practices for teaching math to students with complex support needs. No surprise, systematic instruction. Technology aided instruction. So, using things like digital manipulatives, there are all kinds of math programs out there that you're able to use with students, and things like simulations if you're collecting data, for example. Graphic organizers are an evidence-based practice. The use of manipulatives. Again, I would think that none of these so far are a surprise to you. Explicit instruction. And so, really, when you look at these evidence based practices, it's not that they're not the only ones you're going to use because you might use something like example, non example, but this is your core instructional toolkit. And so, you're going to make sure that when you're teaching math, you're embedding these instructional strategies within your your DLM aligned learning targets. And you can use these to scaffold and provide access to students to grade level concepts, even those high school concepts that might seem more difficult or that they have to make sure that they have those foundational skills on. Now, last thing we're going to touch on today is the use of math story-based lessons. So remember, when you are using those math stories, they are providing a very meaningful context for students to solve problems, and it makes that math come to life. That's why I wrote that there. It really does. Those stories make math come to life. And so you want to make sure that students are following a narrative. That's what the story does, and it helps them to organize their facts. And then it also helps them know how to apply those operations, right? We have something like a compare phrase in there that will help to support a student. And so an example might be that you're going to write a story about buying bagels, and you would then do maybe an addition or a subtraction problem or problems within the story. And so we want to make sure that we're using those stories, that we're not only integrating them in our math classes, but to realize that we are actually embedding literacy in math. We are teaching those at the same time. And so those math stories can really bridge things that are abstract and make them more concrete, help the students connect with their past experiences and their prior knowledge. And again, the National Council of Teachers of Mathematics have indicated that it is extremely important that we embed our math in meaningful and context-based situations, because what we want is meaningful and context-based learning. So when you're teaching math story-based lessons, there are really five stages. First, you're going to use a graphic organizer. That's going to help connect the new skill to students' previous learning. You can use it for review. You can use it, it allows you to practice this new skill or the skills that are necessary for solving the problem. The second stage, you're going to walk through a story. And as you're walking through a story, you're going to model that mathematics through things like a think aloud. And remember, that story makes those things that are abstract more concrete and embeds them in real world situations. Step three is you're going to work on skill building. So I initially, usually in my first example in a math story based lesson, is I'll solve it for the student. That is my model. That's kind of like my I do. And then what I do is I repeat that process later on and add different numbers in, or I might change the context a little. So I can repeat that and give the students the opportunity to solve those skills and then fade that modeling out to allow students to apply what they've learned to the story. We always want to make sure that we're planning for generalization. I've probably said that 4 times in this week's content, but you want to make sure that, again, you're planning for generalization so you can have different storylines, provide different scenarios, different types of applications. And then the final thing you want to make sure is that you are assessing your students, that you're documenting their progress, that when they are making errors, you're providing error correction. If you need to, you're going back and retest, and that each stage of this is really just promoting students' understanding and their independence. I do want to let you know also that in this week's PowerPoint, I do have task analysis for teaching a math story based lesson, and it literally walks you through step by step what to do when teaching a math lesson using a math story. We also have on here examples, and this is on our Canvas website, examples of an elementary math story based lesson and a high school story-based lesson, or a middle school or a secondary is really what it should be. All right, that's it for this week. If you have any questions, make sure you write them down. Make sure you reach out, and I will see you in class.